Hey, what up? It's Tampa Brad back at you with book number 3 of my 20 books for 2020. We're getting mad close to book number 1. Any guesses on what it is? If you want to know, it's on my Instagram. So go follow me on Instagram at Tampa Brad. You can find out what book number 1 is before I even get there. But today we're doing book number 3, which is The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. I love this book. And what I love about this book is that it isn't idealistic. So Robert Greene doesn't talk about the world as he thinks it should be. All he does is he takes case studies and examples from history and examples from modern history, and he just talks about the world as it is. Not as it should be, but as it is and as he sees it. And so what's nice about that is you get very tactical very quickly. When you're talking about the world as it is, you can't, there's just no room for creative interpretation or kind of, mental masturbation, so to speak. He gets down to the cold hard facts of what actually works and what has happened in history. And so he uses a ton of historic examples. And but I'll be honest about this book. The first time that I started reading it, I read it on a recommendation. And the first time I started reading it, I did not think I was going to enjoy it. I actually read it because it was recommended by a self-help teacher, Owen Cook, who I really, really enjoy all of his content. So when he recommended it on one of his videos, I thought to myself, wow, okay, I have to read this book. But when I started getting into it, it was I think in the opening, Robert Greene said something like, you can like or you can dislike the idea of power or accumulating power or getting in a position of power. But whether you like or dislike it does not make it non-existent and does not make it true. So in other words, just because you don't want to look at it doesn't mean it's not there. It's like, for example, if you take the idea of pavers or walk stones through a garden, right? If you were to lift up one of those stones, you'd probably find slugs or, beetles or all types of nonsense underneath the paver. And you can pick up the paver and you can be like, oh, there's slugs, don't look at it. Or you can pick up the paver, look at the slugs and be like, look, there's an awesome ecosystem of life under this paver. Sure, it might not be the most beautiful thing in the world, but it is what it is, and put it back down and go on your merry way. Or, become a slug biologist and look at slug biology and stuff. I don't know, whatever. Some of you probably like slugs. So the point is, Robert Greene looks at things as they are, doesn't sugarcoat them. And so what comes out of that is 48 different, very interwoven principles by which you can live your life in order to be a person that other people just don't screw around with. There's certain people in the world who really just get right down to business. People tend to respect their time. They don't waste their time, and they get right down to business with them. And what leads out of that is, A, your time is valued at a much higher dollar rate, so you can charge more for your services in whatever you do. I don't care if you're a political fundraiser or you raise money for charity water or pencils of promise or something like that, or if you're a ninja business person who's growing an empire, or if you're a day trader, whatever it is, you will be more highly compensated for whatever it is that you do, because you will tend to just be like a magnet. You'll be like an iron rod that gets magnetized. You will just attract money like iron filings. I've seen this. And the examples that Robert Greene gives in the book just go to show that people who are in positions of power, it's a very precarious situation in almost all situations. People who are in a position of power can either lose it very quickly, or they can go from having little power and shoot up to having a lot of power also very easily. And so throughout history, power has been very concentrated. So if you look at people like rulers, like the King of France, for example, he gives a lot of examples of, I believe it was Louis XV, the Sun King. And so what you can see is power, when it's so concentrated like that, it really almost puts it under a magnifying glass. It puts it under a magnifying glass so you can see the nuances of everything he does and how it relates to whether he's building his power or whether he's losing power. And so the amount of lessons that are packed into this book, I really cannot say it enough. There is so much immediately applicable knowledge in this book. I mean, literally, it's gotten to the point in my life to where if I hear someone reference something that sounds like a law, like, for example, I say this all the time. If somebody just keeps talking and keeps talking and keeps talking, especially if I'm working with them to say like close a deal, so we do construction, we're a general contractor. So a lot of times we're doing joint deals with other business partners and referral partners and business associates. So sometimes I'm not the lead on a project, so the other person might be pitching it. So I've seen many, many, many situations, and I'm sure you have too, where someone will talk themselves out of an advantageous situation. They've got the advantage, the person wants to buy from them, and then they keep running their mouth, right? And they talk themselves out of an advantageous situation. I literally have gotten to the point to where people know me and I'll be like, Law 6, always say less than necessary, hello, come on. Or I'll literally just say it, I'll be like, yep, always say less than necessary, ha ha ha, and I'll make a joke out of it, and then the person knows, oh, okay, that I'm talking too much, so I need to, wrap it up here and get on to, it's already sold, I just need to move on with my day. So what I did was, I went through the book and I figured out what are my 5 favorite laws, and I'll give you a brief synopsis of each of the laws. And really, these are the ones, so I'm a big fan of 80-20. If you saw my, Apollo, what number is it? Number 8, maybe? So on Wednesday, 80-20 sales and marketing is coming out, right? You would know that if you follow my Instagram. I love distilling, even in the book, The 48 Laws of Power, statistically speaking, 50% of the knowledge is going to be in 1% of the ideas, or maybe more appropriate, 80% of the knowledge is going to be in 20% of the ideas. So I figured 5 is a nice round number that will really condense it down for you and will really get to the nitty gritty of what this book is about. And like I said, all of the ideas and the laws in the book are interwoven. They all kind of go together. They're synergistic. And when you start getting them down, they all kind of fall in like clockwork because they make sense. There are very few laws in this book that contradict another law. There are a couple instances, and you'll see that, but in each case it's very merited, and you can see the examples that Robert Greene gives in the book really do a good job of laying out why the law is true. So we'll start with law number 4, and we'll go in chronological order through the book. So law number 4, this might be my favorite law. Yeah, no, that's not true. It's number 2. This is my second favorite law, but it's always say less than necessary. So I say this to people literally on a multiple times a week basis. I mean, I'm always saying this. And the reason I'm always saying this is because people always feel the need to talk more than necessary. And what that stems out of actually is insecurity. It stems out of a feeling that if you don't say something to fill the silence, something bad is going to happen to you. You don't feel like your presence, just literally being there in the room or on the phone, is enough to hold someone's attention. So you feel like you need to entertain them. And if you feel like you need to entertain the other person, by default, even if you are their boss, they know that you think they're higher status than you. This is extremely applicable in poker. Think of the game of poker, right? Think of why we have something that's called a poker face. It's a way to show that you don't need to pander to the person across the table. You don't need to show your cards, because the less that you're showing, the more power that you have. If you have a tell or a giveaway, you're giving the other person too much information. And so I'm actually reading another book right now, which is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's a book about negotiating. He's an FBI hostage negotiator. Amazing book, phenomenal. It might have made the list if I would have read it last year, but it'll be on next year's list. So look for $21 for 2021, teaser bid. But anyways, I'm reading that book and I'm realizing how much this law plays into it. He's talking about the idea of tactical silence. And that's exactly what Robert Greene is saying in law number 4, always say less than necessary. He's saying use tactical silences and use the idea of pulling back and not reaching, but allowing others to come to you. It's the art of allowing, okay? It's really about being confident enough to hold whatever ground you have, make a statement definitively, not in an upward intonation. If you want to know more about that, watch my video about how to use your voice and be more convincing. When you're making a statement, make a downward intonation and be done, okay? So always say less than necessary. I have a whole video about that. Go check that out. Law number 6, my next one. This is an amazing law. I mean, if you watch any of my stuff on YouTube or Instagram, you know I love this law. Court attention at all costs, okay? This law is one that people do not understand. And again, they mess this up on a daily basis. And it really is a misunderstanding because people, for whatever reason, haven't been able to see what it means when you get a lot of attention. Unequivocally, when you get a lot of attention, if you know what to do with that and you can do something with it successfully, it will benefit you. And to really, just to sum it all up, to sum up this law perfectly, and I have more to say about it, but I really just want to stick this in your mind. It is better to be hated and ridiculed than to be ignored. Say that again for effect. It is better to be hated and ridiculed than to be ignored. Because think about existence, right? Would you rather be alive or dead? That's a simple question, right? So in the eyes of other people, would you rather be alive or dead? Even the person that they hate, Donald Trump is a good example. A lot of people hate Donald Trump, but he piggybacked off of people's hate for him, literally. A lot of people love him too, but he piggybacked off of that to become president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. So think about the fact that courting attention at all costs means that it doesn't mean go make a buffoon of yourself. That's not what the author is saying. That's not what he's saying at all. In fact, there's another law that says guard your reputation reputation is so important, guard it with your life. So he says court attention at all costs, but also guard your reputation. He's not saying make a fool of yourself. What he's saying is if you get the opportunity to be exposed to a lot of people, take it as an advantage. Use it to your advantage. Look, if you get exposed to a lot of people, they know you're there, you can't hide, you might as well do something with it. It's the person that hides that has negative things happen in your life, the person who's able to parlay the attention that they're getting, that really is able to transform their life in a very massive way. So again, court attention at all costs, and I'll leave you with it one more time. It is better to be hated and ridiculed than to be ignored. Let that sink in. So we'll skip a couple to Law 27 for number 3. It is play on people's need to believe to create a cult-like following. I love this one. Oh, do I love this one. I'll keep this one brief because I have a whole video where I go in depth and really lay out exactly what Robert Greene talks about in the chapter. But very briefly, people's need to believe, right? For some reason, and I actually don't know the psychology behind this, and if someone watching knows the psychology, I'd love to hear the explanation. But people, when they don't know something about another person, tend to fill in the blank with the most illogical, crazy shit you've ever heard in your life. People imagine things about other human beings, just normal human beings, right? Like take celebrities, for example. They imagine that they're like a robot or an alien or some like kind of crazy thing. Like people will make up the craziest stories about people whose lives they do not understand. And what that means then is you can use that to your advantage. So I talk about this in a lot of these 48 Law of Power videos, is that if you leave space, if you leave unanswered questions in your life, you give people a lot of information, but not all the information, they will fill in the blanks with the most crazy, outlandish things, and 99% of the time it will work to your benefit because they're thinking about you, right? And then if they come up with some outlandish story, what do people love to do? They love to gossip. So if you allow people to tell outlandish stories about you, they're going to tell their friends, and that's going to play back into law number 6, courting attention at all costs, and it's going to increase the number of people who are thinking about you. And that, just by nature of how the world works, will increase your power. So number 40, moving on, despise the free lunch. So I'll be honest, when I read this chapter, Despise the Free Lunch, I think I actually might have cried when I read this chapter. This chapter was so impactful on me. So this chapter was so impactful on me that I can't even begin to explain how deeply I resonate with this chapter. There weren't a lot that like hit me on an emotional level to where the story of whatever happened in the chapter really was like, oh, that like was a gut punch, and like that I really resonate with that, but this was the one. Most of them I'm like, yes, I agree with that 100%. Let's go get it. I'm motivated to go and like do things or like tell people. But this one was like, oh my gosh, so much pain. Despise the free lunch. What it means is there's just no free shit. There's just nothing that's free. If you think that you're gonna get something for free, or you think that there's a magic pill, or you think that you're gonna go do the same thing you've been doing for double the rate of pay somewhere else, and there's not any strings attached, or it's not gonna be worse in any way, you are sadly and just laughably mistaken, okay? There is no free lunch. And even if you have a lucky break, realize that what that's actually doing is it's training your brain. It's actually a disadvantage. It's training your brain. Anything you don't work for, it's training your brain to think that everything is gonna be that easy. It makes you less resilient. It makes you less resourceful. And in the big picture, little wins that you get, like little lottery wins, they will actually, for a lot of people, they will ruin their lives. I can't tell you how many of my friends will win $100. I'm from Newport Richie, so it's kind of like not like lower middle class white folk, you know, not trailer trash, but like slightly above trailer trash. That's kind of like the type of people I grew up with. So love you guys. Some of you are watching, I love you. You know, I resonate with that, I identify like that. But I see my friends from high school, for example, win $100 on a scratch-off ticket, and they will proceed to spend several $1,000s over the next couple of months and justify that several $1,000 spend by the one $100 winning ticket. If that is you, and you know who I'm talking to, audit how much you're, and the thing is, I can't even probably get through to you. There's maybe like one person out of the 100 who I could potentially be addressing with this. I can't even necessarily get through to you if you're in that paradigm, but just take for a second and account for, if you really accounted for how much you're spending on those lottery tickets versus what you're getting in return, is it a positive ROI? Most likely, no. And you know how I know most likely no? Because the lottery exists and makes money. It's statistics, it's simple statistics. And regardless of what your mom told you or your parents told you, you are not lucky. Statistically, no one is lucky, okay? It's a numbers game, and if you don't obey the numbers, again, that's what this book is about. If you don't see things as they are, then you are just royally effed in the, you know what and the you know where. I'm trying to clean up my act and curse less, so you can imply what I was saying there. So, despise the free lunch. This, if you just wanted to read one chapter out of this book, it would be this chapter. This is my favorite law, despise the free lunch. The author tells a story, I'll leave it as a cliffhanger. The author tells a story in this chapter that if you really think about it, you really listen to it, it will mess you up in profound ways. I mean, it will mess with your mind. It messed with my head for a week. I couldn't get it out of my head, the story that the author tells in this chapter to illustrate the point. And it's a transgression of the law, by the way. It's not somebody who obeys the law, it's somebody who does the wrong thing, not what the law says. So the last one I want to cover on is actually the last law in the book. It's law number 48, and it is assume formlessness. Now, what does that mean? Assume formlessness. Well, let's take the example of water, right? There's like a cup right here. It's got a little bit of water in it. When you put water in a cup, it takes the shape of the cup. If you put water in a bottle, it takes the shape of the bottle. If you put water in a mason jar, it's very country chic-esque, and it takes the shape of the mason jar. If you can be like water and you can assume the form of whatever is required from you at that moment, that is the ultimate power. That is the ultimate human superpower, is to be like water. That's why Bruce Lee said it, be like water. So what that also implies is that you can figure out a way to have status and power in any environment you're tossed into. You could be dropped in the middle of Kuwait, a gringo, I know that's not the right culture, but you could be a gringo in Kuwait and you could figure your way out of it. You could figure out how to mold yourself to the situation as required. The other thing that assumed formlessness means is you keep your options open. There's one trail, there's one idea, there's one concept that just traces its way through the books, and it's very subtle. And if you're not looking for it, you probably won't see it. But it's the fact that options are where all power is derived from. I'll say that again, and actually I'll reverse it for you. All power is derived from options. I like that phrasing a little better. So since all power is derived from options, all of these laws revolve around keeping your options open. And not just that, maximizing your options, making the most out of what your options are. There's actually a law in the book that's called don't commit to anyone. That is an extremely clear statement of the law of keeping your options open. But in the last chapter, Robert Greene really just blows it out and says, look, for you as a human being, your only power is your power to choose. That's all we really have at the end of the day. All we have is a power to choose. So the more decisions you are empowering yourself to make, the more powerful you are. And if you understand that, all of the rest of the laws in the book will come together, and you will actually, like I said, like an iron rod that gets magnetized, you will draw people and money and respect and honor and power to you like a iron rod drawing iron filings, okay? So dig into this book. I've said it before, I'll say it again. If you watch this video and you don't go read this book, I'm going to, no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, if you don't go check out this book, this video has been a complete waste of your time. Please don't do that to yourself. Don't do it to me, but especially don't do it to yourself. Don't waste both of our time by watching this video and not going and taking the action of reading the book. How hard is it to read the book? Read it in the car, get Audible, put it on in the car while you're driving around. You know you should. It's $15 a month, and I'll tell you, I read something that blew my mind last night. Actually, I use Audible, so I listened to it. You'll hear more about this book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, in a later video. But something that Stephen Covey says in the end of The 7 Habits is the person that doesn't read is no better than the person that can't read. And if that doesn't blow your face off, then basically you should just end the video right here. Think about that. The person that doesn't read is no better than the person that can't read. That's just crazy. So true, but so crazy. I never heard that before that, literally last night. So applicable. So don't be an illiterate third world citizen. Go read this book, go check it out. Also, hit me up on Instagram @TampaBrad. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I would really appreciate it. It helps me out truly a lot. Thank you for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. We got 2 left. We're almost there. See you next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.